What if you could watch a Friday the 13th movie from the perspective of Jason Voorhees? Enter In a Violent Nature, a slasher movie that stays with the killer instead of his helpless victims. The movie's a love letter to the slasher subgenre whilst also attempting something fresh. Let's take a look. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Hello, happy to be here.
Didn't see like a Canadian hello since we're doing a Canadian movie.
Hey there, how you doing?
My apologies to all of our Canadian listeners. Welcome to the show. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together and we talk about a movie. It's that simple. It is October, is the October-thon, which means we're doing a bunch of episodes. Not just one puny episode a week. We're doing like 3 or 4 episodes a week over the course of October. And today's episode is one of the bigger 2024 movies from around May time that we hadn't gotten to at the time because, you know, Tim's got 2 kids. He's busy, he's staying at home. He doesn't have time to go and see every little thing that comes out.
Apparently we're not important enough to get screeners, so
well,
thanks, Hollywood.
Well, we do get offered screeners, Tim, but we don't get offered screeners for the movies we want to watch. We get offered screeners for like something that was made on a $10 budget and, you know, stuff
that like would later be evidence in a court trial. Like,
but yes, today we're doing In a Violent Nature, which is a Canadian produced slasher movie, which I did hear
that counts as our foreign film for the month.
Very good. But I did hear some buzz when this came out. It did, like, I didn't really know much about it. I didn't really know what its gimmick was. I just saw the poster and heard people say it was good, and that's all I knew. So I was excited based on that alone to finally check it out. But went in fairly blind. How blind were you going into this?
So I think I had heard of the gimmick, but I think I misunderstood it.
Okay, curious to hear about that when we get spoilers.
Okay, yeah. But I mean, similar to you, like, all I really knew was, there's like a gimmick to it. You know, it's playing on a lot of slasher stuff, and I heard a lot of people mention one death in particular, which I guess I won't say which one it is.
Oh yeah, we'll save that for spoilers for sure.
I think you probably know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I've got a good idea. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, that's about what I had heard as well.
Yeah, so I went in completely blind. I was not expecting it to be in 4:3. I'll say that off the bat. I was surprised. There's something kind of surreal about watching a movie in 4K that's 4:3. It's just this like a weird combination of things because you associate it with older stuff.
Too many 4s. Yeah.
Too many 4s. Yes, of course. 4s are not 6s. That's not the devil's number. It's the 4s that are the real problem. 6s are a red herring.
I think 4s are like the Canadian devil. Yeah. 444.
444. Yes. So yes, we'll start spoiler free, of course, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers. And if you are enjoying the show and you're on YouTube, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch. And of course, you can get bonus episodes every month over at Patreon if you want to support the show and help keep it coming. But I'll tell you more about all that stuff at the end of the episode. Although there's extra bonuses because it's October, I'll throw that in as well. Since
if you really want your bang for the buck, just get it for October and then November 1st, just unscribe as fast as you can.
No, don't do that. That's a horrible idea. There's good bonus content all year round. Don't listen to Tim.
That is true.
I'm not having that. It's just, anyway,
but the best bonus is in October.
Yes,
that's why we call it Bonetober. Well, that and the skeletons.
All right, In a Violent Nature. It follows a typical slasher kind of premise, but it conveys it in a unique way where it largely actually follows the slasher villain, the slasher, if you will. Kind of from his perspective is, I guess, the gimmick of the movie. And I don't think that's a spoiler to say because as soon as you start the movie, you're going to get that that's roughly what we're doing. It's not entirely the whole thing, but that's kind of the main sort of big sort of thing that it's doing that's separate from other things.
I think my misunderstanding was like I thought it was going to be more like from their point of view, like almost like a first person thing or something. You know what I mean?
To be fair, though, I mean, we've not done it yet, but we'll get to Maniac 2012, I think it is, the remake, and the original as well. They're both worth doing. But this is doing something a little bit different than that, which is cool. I mean,
What I just thought of is maybe we can commit to this now, but we should do Maniac May.
Maniac May.
Yeah.
So Maniac remake, Maniac
and
Cop.
May.
Oh, and May. Oh, I see. I was going to be more Maniacs, but you thought no, the movie May. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, we've not done that yet. That's possible. All right. That's good. I mean, as far as other than premise, all I'll say is there's a group of like college age people or maybe mid 20 somethings at a cabin, and they may or may not be fodder for a slasher villain. That's all I'm going to say. Right. Everything else I'll leave for spoilies. So Tim.
Yeah.
How do you feel about In a Violent Nature?
I liked it. I thought it was good. I don't know if I loved it. I think maybe that might be going a little too far, but like as far as kind of, a movie that's maybe experimenting with, a gimmick or trying something different, I thought it was effective. I don't know if it worked all the time for me, but for a good portion, I liked it. And, it has some, pretty decent kills. I think there's, like one or two like standout ones, and some that maybe are, don't stand out as much, but were still like pretty fun. And, it plays at a lot of, slasher, tropes and stuff, but in a fun way that, if you're a fan of the genre, that you can appreciate it. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm in like a weird mood, or maybe because I'm not the biggest slasher guy. Like I like it. I have a fondness for it, but I'm not as hardcore as some other people. Like I would say, like yourself included. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that this like blew me over the moon. But I enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah, I kind of loved it, Tim. I kind of loved it. In my veins. I'm not saying it was pitch perfect the entire time, but like once I kind of realized what it was doing, and I just had that sense where I'm like, oh, this is not going to change significantly. This is going to be how this movie's shot, and we're going to keep doing this type of thing the entire time pretty much. I was like, okay, I think I'm into that. And what was left at that point was like, okay, the kills themselves, are they going to be good? And the first one is kind of like, just suggestive. You don't really see anything. And I was like, oh, maybe it'll hold back on the kills. However, when you get to the second kill, any notion that it's not going to be very gory and violent, it goes right out the window. And you're like, okay, they've got some good, effects and practical stuff and some stuff. And then there's a kill that frankly made me go, okay, all right, so we're going to be like hitting backwards and forwards like a tennis match between Terrifier and this franchise now about who can do the most absurd kill, because there's a kill in this that kind of rivals the most absurd kill in Terrifier 2, and it just so happens at the time of recording that Terrifier 3 is less than 2 weeks away, so I'm like, the balls on your side of the net are I can't wait to see you hit it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if we didn't have Terrifier 3, just I mean, I don't want to give away when we're recording this, but it's very soon for that arriving. But if it wasn't for that, I would say, this kind of has it locked in for kill of the year. But I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, because I suspect that I'll put Terrifier out as quickly as possible once we've done it. There is a very high chance that the review for that will already be out before this goes out.
Ooh, okay.
So when we watch Terrifier, we'd already seen this, which means we're going to have to be careful. Do you know what? Maybe I'm going to bump this one up as well, just so that this is going to... Since we're referencing Terrifier, and since there is like maybe a bit of like a violence competition between them, maybe it's worth me bumping this up in the schedule a bit to before Terrifier 3 gets released.
Just put Omen 2 at the end of the month and it'll be fine.
Oh, after 3 and 4 and the remake and the first Omen. Okay. All right, sure, Tim. That's a winning idea. I may bump this up in the schedule actually, just so there's no weird continuity. Because we're sitting here going, oh, I wonder if Terrifier 3 will top this. It means that when we do Terrifier 3, we'd have to like not mention anything about this movie because we couldn't reveal what we thought about it. So I'll put this out first. I'll shake up the schedule.
It's bad enough to have like continuity freaks like when you're talking about like a movie or something, but like people that are continuity freaks about the podcast, like, this episode came out before this one, like, oh.
Absolutely. Can't upset the freaks, Tim. You know that's important.
No, they're our biggest Patreon members.
yes. The biggest clientele, the freaks. No, I really
I
like
hear they
this.
mostly come out at night, too.
Oh, very good. Yes. That's aliens, Tim, not freaks.
No, the freaks do come out at night. There's a whole song about it.
There is? What song is this? I don't know this song.
It's called The Freaks Come Out at Night.
I've never heard of it. You're just making this up. This is just not.
I'd play it for you right now, but I mean, we don't want to get a copyright strike.
Of course not. Of course
we'll
not.
Listen to it after the pod.
No, you were quoting Newt from Aliens. That's where that line comes from. I'm not having anything else. Okay. No, I really like this movie. I think it was scratching my slasher movie fan itch. It was presenting in a very similar premise in a very new, different visual way, but it was also kind of scratching a little bit of my art house itch as well, because it's kind of shot in an art house way. Like, it's not doing anything art house plot wise or any like super big ideas. It's not. It's super simple. And the idea is that you only get like sort of little snippets of the plot or the backstory or who the characters are whenever the killer is near them, you know? I could probably compare it, like, you know how at the start of Halloween, the opening scene where Mike, it's the POV shot of Michael and he's going around the house, and you get like a little bit of the sister and the brother like flirting and talking to each other from the window, and then you get a little bit once he's round the other door, and then eventually, you know, when he comes down the stairs, you get like a little bit in different pockets, and you sort of build the story based on what little snippets of information you get. I'd say like any plot or character you get in this movie is entirely presented through little snippets like that. But except with the one exception where they kind of just give you like a sort of traditional slasher movie scene at a campfire, where they kind of do let it just be a scene for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not a big deal. Like,
what's the tone? You're about to complain. I can tell. I can sense the complaining coming. What is it? Would you have a problem with this?
No, I guess I'm being a little bit of a stickler, but it did feel like they were cheating sometimes, where it's like, okay, we're just breaking away from the format, you know, like at certain points in it. But
I don't know if I would say that, because it's not like like he's like, we know the killer is present in that scene. He hears every word they say. So to me, it wasn't breaking the format, because it's not like they established a you know, it's not a POV. It's not like it's always going for the exact same shot. There's a lot of recurring types of shot, but they don't stick to the same thing. So for me, that wasn't breaking the format. I actually kind of loved that it shook things up, because I think with this strict kind of like shooting style they had for most of the scenes, where it's a lot of like walking through the forest and stuff, and it's all about the pace of the footsteps and like the sound of the crunching leaves and all that, which to be honest were far too loud. Like, leaves actually are nowhere near that loud. If anything, walking in grass is like the quietest possible surface to walk on. But that's you know, whatever. That's just fun. I'll forgive that. But for me, like, those moments where it breaks away a little bit were actually like needed to break up the like the, I don't know, the pacing, like to give you like a rest from like the very aggressive style that it has, where it says, hey, for a couple of minutes you get to have a normal scene that just kind of lets you breathe a little bit, and then you get back into like the fun stuff. I don't know. I think that kind of worked for me.
I think it's probably what's needed. Like, I don't know, part of me is kind of like, well, I wish maybe it felt like it stuck to its guns more, because to me it does feel like, okay, we're, you know, breaking away from, you know, what I kind of feel like the point of it, or, you know, the gimmick or whatever is. But I mean, I'd probably, if they didn't do that, then I'd probably complain that's just like, like, you know, we're stuck behind this guy for like a whole movie, you know?
Yeah, but to be fair, it's not like we're always behind him, though. There's several scenes with him where we do cut to different types of shot, different types of wide shot, you know, like, it's not always, like, obviously, yeah, there's a lot of shots where we're, like, behind him, like, we're playing a video game almost, and we're just, like, following his back, kind of like, all right, hold left stick forward to move. Like, there's definitely a lot of shots that are like that, but it's not, like, a constant thing. They do break away from that all the time, so they give themselves enough wiggle room that I genuinely did not feel like the campfire scene is the example we're using here. I did not feel like that broke away from what it was doing. Obviously, without spoiling anything, it does kind of break away from what it's doing for the ending for the last like, you know, however many minutes. But there is like a narrative reason for it to break away, so it didn't feel like a, you know, nothing in this to me was anywhere close to like what Late Night with the Devil did. And I won't spoil that movie. I'll just say that movie completely betrays like what its gimmick was. I don't think this movie does. I think this movie's still a movie that can choose to do different styles of scene and shot. It just has a very strong motif that it's working with throughout. So I don't know. I felt there was a lot of open room for this to do little surprising things occasionally that did. Like, it was almost exciting when it broke away from its like shooting style a little bit, because we're doing something different for a second, and that feels important because we are doing something different. So I disagree with that. I really like the shooting style and the like how much they stuck to it, just the right amount for me.
I do agree. It's definitely not as egregious as like something like Late Night with the Devil.
Oh, that was the end of the sentence. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, obviously we just disagree on that, but like I was watching this. I actually posted in the Discord a gif of Hugh Jackman from The Fountain, like seeing the light and like the hair blowing and saying that feeling when you're watching a movie for streams is actually pretty good. Because hey, we watch a lot of crap, especially when it's the new movies. We watch a lot of crap on this show.
And I think even like this year, a lot of stuff that had been getting like quote unquote buzz were kind of like on, you know.
Some of it. I feel like we've not done the biggest ones yet, though. Like, even now.
Yeah.
You know, because we haven't done Longlegs yet. We haven't done Maxine yet. We haven't done. Not that it's getting the most buzz, but we haven't done Trap yet. We haven't done. Like, there's a lot of things we've not done yet that, like, I think it's got potential.
Oh, sure, yeah. There's still stuff I'm looking forward to, but I think towards the beginning of the year, there's definitely stuff that we're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, people are saying good things about it, like hearing some good stuff, and then you watch it, and it's kind of like, well, it's fine, I guess.
Yeah, was that not more just stuff that we were catching up on in 2023 though, where we did find almost nothing that we really liked? Because that was a rough stretch. I thought
2023 did end up being particularly bad.
2022 was great. 2023 was rough. I think 2024's got a good chance right now of having a nice selection by the end. I'm not feeling worried yet. I mean, between this and Exuma already, if I get another 2 bangers, you know, and given that Terrifier 3 and Nosferatu exist, and then other stuff that I just mentioned, like some of that I might end up loving. I think 2024's got a really good chance of having a strong year for horror at this point. This was a kind of another like big one for me, where I connected with this on a level where I'm like, I'm super into this. It feels super fresh, even though it is homaging a lot of like slasher movie tropes. It's so fresh in how it presents them that I was like super into it. It's not going to work for everyone. I think some people are going to like, you know, watch them walk in the woods for like 30 seconds and go, what's this? This is boring. Nothing's happening. But I'm like, no, I'm captivated by this. This is the sort of like, you know, kind of artsy pacing that I can get into in the right context. And this is absolutely the right context, I think. Because you know, the killer is basically Jason. Like, yeah, obviously there's a few different little things, but as soon as you see a vague shape of him, you're like, okay, he's a pretty tall, tough looking guy with ripped clothes, and you know, obviously eventually gets a different kind of mask, but he's basically Jason.
And I mean, I think that's another thing that helps us a lot too, is that we just haven't had a proper Friday the 13th in like so
I know
long.
Yeah, jeez. I mean, yeah, like the last one we had was the remake, which wasn't terrible, but it wasn't particularly good either. And
that was like over, what, 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, 15. That was 2009, Tim.
Wow. Jeez.
Yeah, like there's... And hell, Freddy... Before that was Freddy vs. Jason, and like people who were born when that movie came out are turning 21 this year.
Jeez.
So yeah, it's we've been in a bit of a Jason drought, so it was nice to get a character like this. If art is kind of my playful version of Michael Myers, then Johnny from admittedly the name doesn't have quite the same ring to it, but Johnny from In a Violent Nature, it can be my modern Jason for now. And they did announce a sequel already. That's the one other thing I knew.
Oh, cool.
Nice. They did like a teaser poster where the hook that he uses makes the 2, and I was like, okay, all right, yeah,
that's fun.
Yeah, I'm down. I'm down for more of these. So I had a great time. Admittedly, I don't see this being a super long review because ultimately there's not actually that much plot because of how simple it is in terms of what it's doing. But I'm happy to rave about it with spoilers for a bit, and you know,
sure, well,
basically
just get into it.
Just upset Tim because he wants to be moody and be like, it was okay, I guess. I mean, it was no leprechaun or the boy.
I mean, those are much more dynamic characters to me. I'd gladly follow them around a whole movie.
Dynamic. Now I'm just imagining like a camera like behind Warwick Davis like hobbling along like in his little green outfit the whole time.
I'd be into it. Yeah.
All right. Spoilers then for In a Violent Nature. You have been warned. So the movie kind of like starts with like a just like a sort of like abstract shot of like a old like empty window frame in a like a cabin in the woods or something like that. We find out later that it's like a firehouse, like a safety like sort of tower that was there long ago, and we just hear a couple of characters talking, and they're talking about this like medallion that's kind of like dangling somewhere. We don't see it until they leave the scene, and the camera kind of pulls back. And then we see just at the last second a hand comes in and takes it, which seems to be the inciting incident for the whole movie. Basically, this amulet was keeping Johnny like buried underground, and we get a slow sequence of him coming out of the ground like it's like a pipe that almost feels like it's a pipe for air, like he's actually breathing down there in some capacity, which is okay, wild. But yeah, he sort of comes up, and the camera never shows his face. It's always from behind or out of focus. But there's a lot of like artsy shots where it's this like, you know, these shots of the forest, and you've got some like sharp focused like foliage in the foreground, and he's blurry in the background, and everything is very tranquil. It's almost like a nature documentary at times with some of the cinematography.
I actually do like these shots quite a bit, like especially when it would kind of be like he'd be walking for a while, and then like you could just like kind of tell we're still following him in the same position, but you can tell that like we jumped forward and
it cuts cuts ahead,
because like the it'll be like a little bit darker or like a little bit different, like further up the woods or whatever. I really like those. I thought those were cool shots.
I love the idea that there's like a 5-hour cut where it's all in real time, where he's just like, you just follow the entire walk from like his like wake up spot to the house that he gets to. I mean, honestly, if I have a critique, because obviously we follow him, and I'm super engaged at this point. I'm like, this is actually really pretty for a movie like this, and the fact that it's broad daylight for this early scene of this killer isn't like taking anything away from it. If anything, it's kind of intriguing. And because it's a forest, it does specifically feel like a Friday the 13th style setting, as well as him looking kind of like Jason. But he gets to this house, and we get our first example of hearing snippets of like as an argument from like a ranger and like whoever lives at this house, and the guy's telling him to get off his property, threatens to shoot him, whatever. There's stuff going on. If I have a critique about like the first like 2/3 of the movie, the only thing I didn't like, and to be honest though, I don't have a suggestion as to how they get around doing it, because I don't know how else you get this information across, is that when our killer walks into the house, and the guy's not seen him yet, they play with this idea that he's not really trying to be stealthy, he's just kind of accidentally stealthy all the time wherever he goes until a certain point. But he walks into the house, and there's a moment where he looks into like the mirror and like has like a flashback where you see like a little childhood memory play out in the reflection. I didn't like that. That felt a bit hokey, and I was like, but I genuinely don't know, how do you get across to the audience that he just wants this amulet back? Like that's what his goal is the entire time. I don't know how you get it across without it, right? Unless a character just says it later on, which would be a bit clunky.
Yeah. You know? So I didn't really mind that, to be honest. Like, I do agree it's like kind of cheesy, but I don't know. Like, I could see a scene like that happening in like, you know, a Friday 13th movie from like the 80s or something. So
it fits with, I absolutely agree. It does fit with the sort of thing where like Jason would see his mother talk to him for a second or something. Like it definitely feels like that sort of moment. But I would actually argue like this breaks like the movie's format for me more than anything you were talking about with the campfire scene, because it felt supernatural. Like, oh, we're seeing into his head, you know, like, whereas everything else is like, no, it's everything that's just happening in the world. We're just witnessing it. Whereas this is, you know, more fantastical, I guess. But it's quick, it's minor, and I kind of got the vibe immediately that was just to explain that his goal right now is to get that medallion back. And I was like, I don't think we're going to see anything else like that. And sure enough, there is nothing else like that the entire movie. It's just for that one moment and it's gone. But of course, eventually this guy comes in his house and sees him. So our killer starts...
And this guy is like a big dick too. He was just like arguing with the forest ranger and like about setting traps and stuff.
Yeah, he's one of these guys who, you know, threatens to shoot you because you're on his property because he thinks he can do anything he wants. And this guy just, you know, starts running from him, right? The gun proves ineffective.
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that at first he thinks he's like the park ranger or whatever, and it is not until he turns around that he's like, oh, I forget if he like says its name or realizes that it's him or is just freaked out, but
Yeah, I think
instantly starts running away.
because he's kind of like round the corner a little bit as well. So when
Yeah.
the camera kind of comes round and he actually gets to see him properly, and I like the moment because he doesn't see who he's actually got in his house until we see his reaction to it. So it kind of happens at the same time where the camera goes past the shoulder and we see him, and then he looks up and sees him. So it's like, oh, the exact moment he's aware that this is not just a normal person is the exact moment we get to see this guy's face for the first time. So the killer like just follows him out into the woods, and again it's very methodical. You hear the footsteps, the guy's running away, and it seems like, you know, maybe he has got away or whatever, but then you hear screaming, and as we sort of follow the journey, it then cuts to like this clearing in the woods where this guy's ran into one of his own traps. So his foot is caught in you know, a bear trap or whatever, and he's lying there screaming, and the killer just kind of like walks up kind of nonchalantly and like you know, sits him up against like this old truck that's like abandoned in the woods, and this is where I was thinking, oh, maybe they're going to like hold back on the actual deaths a little bit, because this one definitely doesn't show you much. His hand just kind of goes towards his face, and then there's like a harsh cut to his hand walking back to the house, but it's covered in blood, so it just kind of suggests some things as opposed to, you know, shows the murder, you know.
Wait, well, this was not. I guess I'm mixing up with something else. This isn't the one he like smashes his head with a rock.
Oh, that's way later. Yeah, that's like.
Oh, okay.
That's like 2/3 out of the movie. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. One thing that we actually a scene I like that we kind of skipped over. It's a small thing, but
yeah, I was going to say, like, I actually cannot think of a scene that we didn't talk about, so I'm excited to hear it. What go on? What is it?
I mean, unless this happened later on, and I'm confusing the order of this too, but because like I think we can kind of assume like what it's like for, you know, when we see him finding a victim and attacking him. Like it's again, it's cool to kind of, you know, get that point of view, like, you know, from him and stuff. But, you know, we see that a lot through the movie. But there's like a little scene, I think, when he's walking through the woods where he just sees like is it a dead dog or something?
Oh yeah.
And he just kind of like stops and like stares at it, and I don't know. I just thought that was like an interesting scene because it's like, and actually, I guess we get like a few things like that throughout the movie where we see him doing something other than like stalking or trying to kill someone, and that stuff I found really interesting. It's like, okay, yeah, what is he doing when he's not, you know, like pursuing the victim or something? And I like that little stuff.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments that I do want to talk about later where he does something where you can go, why would he even do that? But then it's like, oh, well, why would he do that? Let's think about it. Or why does he do this thing? He doesn't need to, but he does. Yeah, so he goes back into the guy's house after he's killed him and goes up and like picks up this amulet. It looks very similar to the one that was like hanging over his like air pipe, for lack of a better term. And he picks it up and he looks at it, and the engraving says #1 mother effer, and obviously we the
that was
audience,
on his hat too. The guy, I forgot that.
And we the audience all immediately get, okay, that's not the one that was his. Right, someone else has the one that was his. This is clearly do you know what this reminded me of more than anything? It reminded me of Kill Bill when she gets the guy's keys and it says pussy wagon on it. That's what it made me think of. It was just this like just tacky asshole who just has like a slogan that he's just given himself.
Yeah. And stuff like this is interesting because it's funny, but, you know, like the way it's filmed, like it's, you know, it's not like, you know, the like other movies where like, you know, some jokey thing would happen and, you know, there's like this like kind of goofy emphasis on it. Like the way everything is like shot and focused, and it's like, you know, it's
and no
still
music
very
either.
like quiet. Yeah.
No
it's
music.
like everything is, you're just hearing the sounds of the woods. So it's like interesting that it's like, oh, cool. Like I like that you can kind of have like this comedic thing, but it's not like so overemphasized or whatever.
Yeah, it's purely visual. Like just like the kills don't have music to like try and give them extra things. There's no. There's no, none of the movies have a laugh track per se, but like they have like a sort of way where they'll try and emphasize the joke by like, you know, the sound cutting out or a cut to something or reaction.
Or yeah, like you go to some other character, like, well, that just happened or something.
Yeah. We didn't need any of that. And then the killer walks out past where he killed the guy, and you don't get a good look at it, but you do get like an implication that there's like an arm just like on the truck, so you do get like a little glimpse of some gore like off the corner of the frame. You're like, oh, he did mess him up. He didn't just like crush his face and that was it. Like he's ripped him apart with his bare hands. So fun.
Good on you, Johnny.
Yeah. So then he keeps walking and he hears a car going down the street that's near the woods, and he sort of follows the sound to a campfire next to a cabin, which is where we meet our kind of group of, they're not really teens, but like effectively a bunch of teens. Joe, I will say about these characters that I appreciated, and I think one of the benefits of not like following them as the main characters is that you don't have to flesh them out too much. So they have this really cool mix to me of feeling like they're modern. One's got a phone she's taking photos off and stuff and whatever, but they do feel very like good modern recreations of like a group of characters in an 80s slasher movie to me. They felt they weren't too over the top. They felt like just kind of right in terms of like, a couple of the guys were really had a bit of tension. There's some dick jokes getting made. There's one guy who's clearly the goofier one who's telling the story. I think the final girl, if you want to even call her that, like she instantly is apparently, I think it's clear that she's going to be the final girl just for the fact that we're a little bit sympathetic towards her because she's in a relationship with a dickhead who she clearly feels embarrassed by, and like he's like a bit jealous because she's been friends with this other guy. And we find out later that the other guy went through a trauma where his dad ended up like dying after he like abused him or something. Like there was like they sort of implied some stuff later, and I'm like, man, the main boyfriend looks like an absolute dick being like pissy about this. But anyway, like I think, and again, if you'd spend like too much time with these characters, the cracks would probably show. There's definitely a couple of moments where the performances are, they feel a little bit like a low budget movie performance, right? But because they're kept at like an arm's length, quite literally for the most part, I think they're the right mix of like modern and 80s slasher like stereotypes to me. At least that's what I was feeling as I was watching it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, they're pretty fun.
Okay. But obviously there's some vital information other than the small snippets of the characters that we get here between the main girl, again, names, like there's no way. I mean, Chris apparently is her name. So fair enough.
I want to say like the weird guy was like, had like kind of a weird name, like Aaron, but it was like spelled weird.
Oh yeah, it was Ehren. Yeah, that's a weird name. And then I think her boyfriend was Troy, but the guy that she was also close to was Colt, so Troy was kind of being pissy that they were close. And you just get a little bit. Then there's one girl that I'll call the social media girl. There's one who I'll call kind of the slightly gothy girl, I guess. No? I don't know what else to call her.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what else to call her, but she looked less girly than the other one, so I'm saying gothic. And then there was another guy there. He's the one that had the gun later. I have no idea what to refer to him as.
Right.
His name's Evan, apparently, so that's Evan. We'll just go with that. But yeah, the big thing here, though, is that, just like a Friday the 13th, there's a legend of the slaughter that happened nearby, and Aaron like knows the story, so he tells the story. So this is kind of like her big backstory, and again, it feels very reminiscent of like a slasher movie backstory from like I vividly think of a scene from Friday the 13th Part 2 when the camp counselor's telling the story of Jason and the boy drowned here and all that. So very important. I mean, what did you think of the backstory? I mean, not it's that important in the grand scheme of things, but
I don't know. I thought it was okay. I don't know. Like sometimes these things are tough because it feels like too much that we're trying to, like do our own, like, Jason kind of mythos. So like, I don't know. There are times where I kind of like feel like, the writers behind it where it's like, okay, yeah, we're taking this stuff but I mean, it's, I don't know. Again, I'm probably just being too picky. Like it's totally fine. It serves the story, and it's it's something different. It's not just like, oh, he was also like a kid killed at a camp or whatever. Like
no.
I mean, I guess in some ways kind of, but not like a camp, but like a logging. I don't know what you would call that. Like
camp,
community
logging camp.
Yeah. So all right. So I guess he is kind of a kid that was killed at a camp, but in a much different kind of way.
Well, I don't know how much of a kid he was, because they talk about the fact that he was mentally ill. So I was getting the impression that he might have been technically grown up, but with the mind
that's fair,
of a child.
Okay, yeah. That would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, and part of what was making it feel modern is that obviously the guys try to describe what this kid was like, and there's the asshole character who is just like trying to get him to say like the R word. He's like, oh, there's another word for this. I think you're leaving it out. And I almost felt bad for the guy telling the story because I'm like, he's just goading you into saying something bad. I mean, you are kind of dancing around it in a way. You could just say mentally ill. Like, you could just say that, or you know, whatever. But and then like, you know, he jokes about getting cancelled because like the girl's like filming it on her phone or whatever. So it kind of like has some modern like little things like sprinkled in there. Whereas if this was an 80s movie, they'd have just been throwing that word around willy-nilly without even thinking about it.
Probably would have somehow incorporated some like even worse words. Probably.
There's a few homophobic slurs in the sentence as well, just for good measure, just in case you need them.
Just cause, yeah.
So Beatty tells a story about this slaughter that happened, and the backstory to the slaughter is that there was this logging community. We find out later, because obviously this is all sort of like folklore, like he's telling us this like myth that's been passed down. We find out later from the Ranger a bit more of a clear timeline that this was like 20 years ago this happened. Where this like merchant guy who owned the store had was overpriced. I kind of like, honestly, it was actually hard to hear what he was saying at the start of the story.
Yeah, so what I think it was is like you have this like logging camp, and basically the company sets up like their own company store in the camp. So the dad basically ran the store, but then and I think this is like a true thing. Like I've heard
this is Johnny's dad specifically. You're talking about
Johnny's dad, yeah. And like I've heard people like complain about this stuff too. Like, you know, these companies will have these, you know, communities, whatever. It's like, hey, come work with us, and then like you live here, and like you'll pay us for, you know, room and board, and then we'll have a store where you can get everything you need. But then what they do is they jack up the prices, so it's like, okay, all you're doing is working, and then, you know, you're paying. You get the money from the company, but then it all just goes right back to them because you're buying all the stuff from the store. And then that's, kind of the point here was like Johnny's dad, which I don't know if it was so much him or if he was just doing what the company wanted.
Yeah, but, that's what I was unclear on, is that it doesn't necessarily sound like it's his, like he was being like it wasn't like he himself was being greedy and setting the prices necessarily. I mean, maybe he was a company man, so maybe he was a better, you know, maybe he was like a loyal company dude or whatever, but they hated him for this, and they took it out on his son, Johnny, who had difficulties.
Seems a bit unfair.
Yeah, it definitely feels a bit malicious. But they apparently wanted to play a prank on him. Like, one of them got really angry because they lost a job because they stepped on his toy car or something like that. He said. So they
relatable.
Father of two children, yes, relatable that someone got mad that he stepped on a toy car. But he is lured into this trap, not to be hurt necessarily, but they lure him. Johnny is told that there's a bag of toys up on like this fire safety, like you know, cabin or whatever they have in the forest to look out for fires. This fire watch post. And he climbs up, and there's a guy waiting up there in a classic firefighter mask, which I guess is what he's wearing later on in the movie. I've never seen a mask like this before. I think at a glance, I would have assumed it was something to do with deep sea diving, to be honest. It has that kind of look to it.
Yeah, I'd say like something like that, or I thought like mining or something.
Yeah. But it seems like it was something that I mean, don't get me wrong, once I get a good look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's not watertight. There's nowhere that was just for diving. But that's the kind of like vibe that it gives you. It gives you that classic deep sea diver helmet kind of vibe in terms of like sort of style. But basically, he got scared and like, you know, fell and died. Right. So. And they
could have predicted that. Like, we have him climb up here, and we jump out and scare him. And
yeah, so he falls to his death. They get scared, and so they put the mask on him to make it look like he was like playing around up there and had an accident. And that's, you know, they think that that'll be it. However, the dad ends up getting killed in a fight when he sort of like, you know, he basically knows that. He doesn't believe that this was an accident. He confronts them. A big fight breaks out, and when the fight ends, Johnny's dad is left dead as well. So 10 years later, Johnny comes back to life and kills, like, just completely massacres an entire, like, you know, camping ground of people. And the local government like covered it up because they couldn't explain it. They say, oh, it was like a deadly toxin or something, and then some animals like mutilated the bodies afterwards. It wasn't like, you know, not a person didn't do this. There's more we find out later, but that's at least what the camp story kind of like has information wise. So we get like a little sense of this, and they all get freaked out a little bit, and So yeah, classic slasher movie stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't say like I was in love with the story, but it does everything it needs to do. Yeah.
I don't think I really feel particularly any way positive or negative about the story itself. I think I just like the type of story it is and the context that it's being told, but
Sure,
I don't really
yeah.
care that much about, like, the details are just kind of whatever. Like, yeah, okay, right, whatever.
It's a good like campfire story.
Yeah,
the way they're telling it and stuff.
Yeah, I don't think the movie's strength lies in like what this backstory actually is. It's just more that it's a sort of backstory that makes me think of the sort of backstory that a slasher villain would have, if that makes sense.
And again, and I think that's what they're going for. I don't think they're trying to make some Oscar worthy like tale
sure.
or whatever.
So yeah, so it kind of like comes back to the killer who's been standing listening to this from the woods, and they take a photo at the end of the scene, and it's implied that when they look at the photo later, we hear them talk about this much later, that they think they see someone in the background. But yeah, it's like he's standing there in the trees when the flash goes off. So we expect them to but we still haven't seen his face, funnily enough. Like, it's still been concealed from us the whole time. And I was thinking at this point, oh, is he going to get, because I'm pretty sure that the poster's got him in a mask. Like, we're getting this mask. So we kind of build up to that a little bit next. We get a little bit more of the characters as he walks around the house, and this is the part that felt very like opening of Halloween to me, where he's walking around the outside and he's hearing the couple fighting, and this is where we get her saying, no, I'm like, spending time with my friend Colt because his dad messed him up. And like Troy says something like, look, just because his dad messed him doesn't mean that, he has to murder my weekend too, or something like that. I was like a real douchebag like thing. He says, like, okay, well, we're going to enjoy your death later, Colt. Thanks for that. Or sorry, Troy. Troy was the boyfriend. Colt was the other dude. Not that Colt has a much more pleasant ending, to be honest, but still, that's what it is. So one of the things that was mentioned during the campfire scene is that the goofy guy, at that point we hadn't seen any of their faces yet, because it was all just overhearing it, but the storyteller Aaron, apparently he was flirting with some younger girls at the garage on the way here that day. Mm-hmm. And it seems like they think he's going back to go and try and like flirt with them and like spend the night with one of them or whatever, which explains why no one thinks it's surprising that he doesn't come back. Now, we don't know if he's actually doing that or if he is just going to take a shit like he says he is. It doesn't really matter, but it gives you a reason why they don't think it's suspicious that he doesn't show back up, later that night.
If what they're saying is true, though, I think they say it's like 4 hours away. Like, I mean, geez, if he was really going to do that, that is quite a bit to go.
It's quite a bit, but I mean, the girl that makes fun of him for it, the sort of gothy one, she's like, oh, you're like, because he's like, do you think I'm that desperate? And she's like, I think you're you. So yeah, I mean, I don't think they were underage or anything, but they were making fun of him because they're like, like they weren't like flirting with you, they were creeped out by this older dude. So yeah. But yeah, so the next kills him, and as the killer finds him, he's smoking or whatever in the forest against a tree, and the killer just comes up behind him, and he's got one of those like saws that's got like the it's the one that has a handle on both sides that you pull backwards and forwards. One of those. I don't know. I'm sure there's a technical name for it, but he just sort of like whips that around the front of him and starts sawing back into his mouth. So the saw's coming through his mouth. And at first, even with this, I thought, okay, we're seeing a bit of blood, but they're not necessarily going to go that extreme with it. But then you just straight up get the point where he just keeps going, and we're seeing it from the back of the killer at this point, where we just hear kind of like a sort of, not a thud, but like a sort of like he's hit the tree. Like he stops sawing through head and he's hit like the solid tree. And then he just leaves the saw sitting there, and then the camera cuts to a front shot of like the victim, and then of course you just see the head from the mouth up just roll off, and I'm like, all right, okay, they're bringing it. They've got practical effects, they've got some good kills. Okay, they were just saving some of it from the first one. That's all right. I like this kill.
I liked it quite a bit too. I thought it looked pretty good, and this was the one when he was listening to music too, right? Yeah,
he was on headphones, so you hear some music coming from the headphones.
So I thought that was like a nice little touch. Like again, for a movie that's been like relatively quiet up until now, I don't know. I thought it just added like some nice flavor to like the. I don't know what song I played, but I kind of liked it. But I thought it accented the kill as well.
Yeah, he's a bit of a hipster because he's listening to it in audio cassette.
On a Walkman.
Yeah. Wild stuff. Yeah, that'll be a big hit with those younger girls. They'll be like, oh. Oh jeez. So to add to kind of the absurdity of the violence here is the killer like picks him up by like the opening in his head and also picks up the top of the head and just starts dragging him through the forest and keeps it going until he gets to like the ranger station, which we've not seen yet. So he just knew this was here. And the killer like walks up with this body just dragged on the ground, and I really need to sell the absurdity of this visual of him holding like the top of, or not even the top, like he's holding from the top the bottom half of the mouth, so I guess the jaw, for lack of a, just we'll call it, and just dragging the whole body by that. It's like kind of comically dark, but also it's just this steady pace, and because it's just this wide shot from behind him, it's the sort of thing where just having it be such a simple shot from behind following him as he does this actually amplifies how absurd it looks.
Oh yeah.
You know? If it was obviously like a dummy or something that looked bad, it wouldn't like have the same effect, but because it does look good enough, you're like, oh, this just looks great. It's kind of like wild. And then he uses this guy's head to smash open which you don't see like direct on. You see like just the shadow inside the ranger station of like the head hitting the window, and then he just throws the head in so that like, and again, it never cuts away. So you just see the shadow of like the window being smashed with the head. The camera stays there, and then the head just sort of fumbles into frame because the killer's thrown it into the room. And obviously, you know, it's so engaging because you're like, wait, why is he here? What's he doing? Like, he's left the house full of like the other characters who might have the amulet. What's going on? And it turns out they do have the amulet. The boyfriend, the dickhead boyfriend, took it and actually gives it to his girlfriend, Chris. But when he's here, he's looking through, there's a sort of like little museum area in the front of this ranger station where it's got like old, like, you know, newspaper clippings and stuff. But more importantly, it's got a display of some of the tools that the loggers have used in the past, and the mask, the firefighter style mask, which is like a sack with like these sort of grills over the eye holes and whatever. And you're like, oh, there it is. And it's interesting that he doesn't take it right away. He walks over to like it's like a postcard or something that's got like a photograph of like the Rangers. And then that sort of like motivates him to like smash open the display and like put on the mask. And it cuts to like a wide shot outside the building, so you don't even get a good look at the moment he puts the mask on. It's kind of like obscured from you. So it really treats it like, oh, it's a big deal when we see him in this mask for the first time. It's a big deal when we get to see a good look at it and all that. I've been talking for a while. What'd you think of all this?
No, it was cool. Yeah, I mean, like, one of the things about like, you know, slashers, or at least like I think like a good slasher villain is, you know, they have to have like some type of iconic look, and so it's cool that, you know, that's one of the first things he needs is like, okay, you know, I'm back, I'm ready to do my thing, but you know, I need my weapons, my gear. So yeah, I thought it was like a fun scene.
Yeah, I almost wonder as well if he was motivated to do this because hearing the story told at the campfire kind of like reminded him of a lot of it.
Oh, maybe.
You know, yeah. And like, because I was thinking as well, like, why did he even bring this dead body here? He didn't need to. And it wasn't until later when we overhear like other characters who have went to the ranger station because they're worried that some of their friends are missing. They come back yelling, "Oh my God, Aaron's turned up dead. He's at the ranger station." And it occurred to me, oh, I think that's why he brought the body there. I think he wants to announce to the people who know who he is that he's back.
Oh, sure.
I think he takes that body to that ranger station as a display of saying, "Hey, Johnny Violence is back." Like, I mean, beware.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense because, I mean, he's a huge, like, you know, supernatural dude. Like, he could just break the glass if he wanted. Like, he doesn't need to, you know, throw the head or whatever.
Oh, of course, yeah. He could just go and do that, but he intentionally takes the body as like a calling card to say, "Hey, like, you know, I'm back." Which, you know, it's interesting to think about, and I'll be curious to see if they expand on that kind of like attitude that he has in the sequel. Because it's not like he has much, because mostly he's like Jason. He just walks silently. He wants his item back. He goes around killing people. It's that simple, pretty much, for the most part. He does seem to like to cut up some of the dead bodies at times. He seems to get a little bit angrier sometimes, where he'll really mutilate a body more than some others. But for the most part, it's pretty straightforward. But that one idea that he wanted to like announce that he's back to the world by leaving that dead body in a prominent place that will definitely be found seems like, you know, a big deal. Especially since, like, that ranger station is connected to what happened to him, because this is like, the rangers worked here that were involved in when he was like around and his dad was around and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, by the way, we never mentioned this, but the little flashback we got in the mirror, he the pendant or the whatever came from his mum. It was his mum's pendant.
Right, yeah.
That his dad
we
gave
mostly
him.
only hear about his dad. But
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was having some wild theories towards the end because we didn't know what happened to the mum.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I thought we were getting a Mrs. Voorhees moment at the end.
Oh,
I genuinely thought we were, and then it didn't happen. So maybe they'll save it for the next one or something. But I was like, yeah, they never said that the mum died or went anywhere or anything. So
right, yeah,
we don't know.
That's true.
She could be around. It's possible. Oh dear. Anyway, so he walks back to the house, and by the time he gets back to the house, like, sun's rising at this point, right? So we've actually went through like a whole day-night cycle, because it started off in day, got dark, now it's light again, and the next couple of kills are two of the girls. Turns out they're kind of flirting, right? They're the gothier girl wants the influencer girl, like, and she's kind of like, she's like, hey, come in the water and swim in the lake with me, and she's like, no, but come and find me after you're done with your swimming, maybe we'll fool around, right? I'm kind of condensing it a bit, but that was the gist of the conversation,
right?
And I obviously this kill's not that fun from like a gore perspective, because you don't really see much of it. But as far as like a cinematic visual goes, it's a really greatly put together sequence where he basically, on the other side of the lake, just walks into the water until you can't see him. And it holds in that shot after he's been in for ages, just hearing these two girls talk to each other. And the entire time he's under the water. They're just walking on the bottom, like the whole time. Just, and you're like, when's he going to pop out? What's going to happen? When's he showing up? And it's not until the second girl leaves, of course, where the one who's in the water eventually just gets like pulled down, and she tries to struggle her way back up. But it really plays with that idea again, much like the sound of the footsteps in the forest, which it's got this rhythm. This really played with it's like she goes down underwater, and then it's complete silence, and all you can really hear or see, you can't hear this, you can just see it. It's just like the remnants of the ripples from when she went down, and it's very tranquil and serene, and like 15 seconds pass, and then there's like a little bit of a struggle as some hands come up and she's trying to get away, and then she's pulled back under again, and eventually like the body bobs up and she's clearly dead, just kind of floating in the water. And then what's so impressive about this scene to me is that what the shot that we're on when her body like sort of pops up, it stays on that for like a good 15-20 seconds, maybe more. And then the camera starts to pan as he starts to walk out the water on the other side. Now, conveniently, he walks from behind like the pier, so clearly that's where they've been hiding him, so that he's not obviously waiting underwater the entire time. But it really gives you this impression of him like doing that murder and then just like casually walking out of the lake. Several, but it's in the same shot, so it feels like it's really convincing because of it.
Yeah, like this one obviously isn't the most like flashy, like. Like there's not a ton of gore or whatever.
Well,
like
I'd say it's flashy, but not in a gore way. It's flashy in a cinematography way, I guess.
Yeah. No, I like the I guess the concept behind this one is cool.
Yeah, and then I assume the next one's the one that you're hyping up.
Yeah. So I mean, this is one of the big things I kept hearing about the movie was like the yoga death. Oh my god, the yoga death! Like
that's what they call it. They call it the yoga death.
Yeah, which it's kind of funny because I kept like assuming like in my head I was like, okay, so it's probably someone doing yoga and like he, like breaks their back and then like flips them like a pretzel or something like that.
I think for me, what got me about this death is that. It much like the decapitation via like through the mouth from the tree earlier, it started off all right and was, that's a fun death, and then he did something else. I went, that makes it a bit more interesting, that's cool, and then it kept going, and that's what made me think of the Terrifier 2 scene, because that was like a death scene that kept going and kept getting more absurd. This one kind of does that, where it starts off really simple, where he walks out the woods, she hears something and thinks it's the girl coming up to like make out or whatever, and she turns around and she sees this hulking slasher villain there, and she just kind of freezes, like she turns to run, but she's at the edge of like not a cliff, but it's like a really, really steep drop.
I I thought it was like kind of a cliff, like
it's bordering on cliff, yeah. So she just kind of freezes, and he just walks up behind her and punches through her back, right? With the hook, admittedly, but the hook's almost irrelevant because he just kind of punches clean through her, and like she actually is still alive, and she looks down and sees like this fist coming through her stomach, and she sort of slowly turns around, like hobbling, like, because she's obviously she's not dead yet. She's definitely going to die, even if he doesn't do anything else to her. But she turns around, looks at him, and then he just like plants his hook in the top of her head, and I thought, oh, that's fun. Like, that's like a nice little, it's like the punch was cool. The hook in the head's the sort of the funny capper to it. There you go, great scene. Don't need any more. And then then it keeps going.
Yeah, so that's kind of like my thought as well. I was like, okay, I heard people hyping up this a lot, so I was like, okay, is this it? I mean, it's not bad. It's pretty cool, but yeah, I didn't realize there's more to it.
Yeah, so the hook that he's just put in her head is on a chain, and he runs that chain through the hole in her stomach. He turns her around and starts pulling the chain through her back, right? So it pulls her head down. So quite quickly, her head just sort of goes whoosh and like sort of snaps down, and he sort of pulls on it, and you can sort of see the top of her spine starting to like stick out through the back of her neck. And I went, oh, that's pretty gnarly. This is a cool death. And I thought, oh, he's just going to sort of like push her or whatever after this. But then he kept pulling the chain. He kept pulling the chain so much so that her body had folded in half, and then eventually he literally, pulling the chain with the hook, pulls her head back through the hole he's made in her abdomen. And like at this point I'm like, okay, I get that's why they call it the yoga death. It's not because she was doing yoga beforehand.
Or yeah.
This is a demented yoga pose. And then eventually he does kick her off the cliff, for lack of a better word. And like, again, I think what I liked about that is that it cut to this super wide shot before he does it. So because it's so far away, you get away with it obviously probably being like a dummy or something. But at the same time, because it is all in this wide shot, it feels more like, I don't know, like real in a weird way, because you get a sense of the surroundings and this idea of just sitting in the distance seeing this woman like topple down a sort of a sharp hill, effectively. I don't know. I thought that was, yeah. I mean, this was a scene that by the end, much like that Terrifier 2 scene, that if you've seen Terrifier 2, you know what we're talking about. I started giggling with laughter at the end because it went so far over a line that I just started finding it hilarious in a good way, like not in a bad way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I can see why this appeared to be like a standout to a lot of people. It's just a lot of fun. It's always kind of funny to me the kind of things that like really get you. Like, I was totally fine with the like punching the hole through the stomach and then the hook in the head and stuff, but then that like little that spinal bone or whatever that like flourish. Popping up in the neck, like that. Like it's just funny that like something about that is just like makes you like wince and grab your neck and be like, ooh, like, oh yeah, versus all the other like immense gore that's going on. You're just like, oh, okay.
And I'm pretty sure as soon as the hook is in the head, she's definitely dead. Like, there's not like she's feeling any more of this, but it's still nasty. It really gets across that he's very vicious. And I guess, in the comparison to like Terrifier as the other good modern slasher movie that kind of exists, or franchise that exists, is that I'm like, I like that this is so polar opposite of art in many ways, where art is like gleefully enjoying everything he does, whereas this guy is more towards the Silent Jason type. But there's just this extra sense of like wanting to mutilate the bodies that's just giving it this extra space.
That's true.
So yeah, no, like, and there's other good deaths as well. I mean, this might be the peak of like how absurd they get, but there's definitely a couple other really fun deaths that come up a bit later as well. So
yeah, that's the other thing. Like, I wasn't sure because I'd heard so much about this one. I was like, okay, is the rest of the movie just kind of like whatever? But no, there's still some pretty cool ones. Yeah.
I mean, this is obviously the one that stands out the most, but So he's killed like 2 of them now. So the next time he goes near the house, when we hear like the characters talking, like they're actively worried. We could be able to see them here. We just hear them like through the trees. Oh, like, the 2 girls haven't been back all day, and like our other friend who like he's not been back since last night. And the boyfriend's just been a dick and downplaying it and saying, no, there's nothing going on, there's nothing happening, blah blah blah. So basically, the main girl Chris and the friend she has, Cole, want to go and get the Rangers and see, and report people missing, get some help. and the boyfriend's pissed. He's not happy about it. And the boyfriend's a dick and throws the car keys like into the woods, and they land like next to the killer. So we get a whole scene where the killer is like there, and like Colt's looking for the keys and finds like an axe that the killer left on the ground. And the killer's distracted at this point because the keys have like a little toy car on them, which we heard that he had a toy car when he was young. So this is actually the one time in the movie we get to see his face. I thought it was very interesting. They chose to do this in a moment where the killer chooses to take a mask off, and it represents the one moment we get to like know him a little bit better, because he like gets fascinated by the toy, he takes off his mask, and we get a close-up of his face as he's looking at it, and then he crushes it as he hears them talking more. But I don't know. It was interesting, because you could have easily done the moment where someone's struggling and they pull the mask off, like Halloween or something. But no, they chose to do like this moment where he takes it off in a moment of reflection, I guess we'll call it.
Yeah, it was kind of touching to me because my son loves toy cars. He's obsessed with them, and just like I could see the delight in Johnny's eyes, the same light I see in my son's eyes whenever he gets like a new car toy.
Don't worry, one day he will murder several people as well. I'm sure of it, Tim.
As long as it's getting revenge for me, that's fine.
Yeah, of course, yes.
I'm sure we'll finally come to blows one day, and you'll murder me.
Wait, why am I the one getting killed by the big hulking son? I don't want that. I've seen how your father looks. Maybe those bodybuilder genes have skipped a generation. Like your son might be huge, packing it.
That's true. Very likely, yeah.
Somehow, like him and his grandfather are both jacked and look like they can crush your head. And then in the middle there's you with your pizza belly, just been like, I'm cool.
Not too far off, yeah.
Dear. Get him little dumbbells for his next birthday. Basically, the dick boyfriend's left behind, as is like the other guy, Evan. Which, by the way, I really like this actually, because the killer's walking around the house. He does a whole thing where he puts like a log in the car to keep the alarm, like the alarm, sorry, the horn. The honking the horn. He sort of like has like the log pressed against it, so it makes this noise to lure someone out the house. And the killer does a lap around the house to sort of like come out behind like the dick boyfriend, took us up to the car, and he's like, oh, you son of a bitches, who did this to my truck, blah blah blah, and he's going on a whole little tirade. But as he walks past one of the windows, though, you can see Evan in the window notice him and be like, what the hell? And like he clearly reacts to it, and I really like that moment, because you never like, I mean, I guess maybe sometimes in like a slasher movie you might get like a moment where a character just like catches something moving at the window and it freaks them out or something, but I don't know if you ever just get like someone catching like the like Michael Myers like walking past the window as he's like setting up his next kill. Like we might see it as the audience, we might see him walk in the background, because they do that a lot, but having a character just go, wait, was that a dude in the mask at the window? I need to go and check that. So the killer goes up and hatchets the dick boyfriend in the leg, and he's about to kill him, but Evan comes out with a rifle that they have in there, I guess in case a bear shows up or something, and shoots the killer a couple of times in the chest. So they think they're safe. He's like, oh shit, that hurt, I need to get you to the hospital. And of course, when they're going away, the killer just sits up. Like he's just like, he takes a little bit of a rest, but he's not, right. You know, it's whatever. I feel like, actually, now I'm thinking about it, this movie has a very rhythmic nature to its kills, where you get one that's kind of stylized and off camera and is a bit more cinematic, and then you get one afterwards to give you the gore that you probably wanted if you felt like you missed it. Because you get the opening kill where you don't really see it, and then you get the tree kill with the saw. You get the girl who's pulled underwater, and then you get the yoga kill, which is like absurdly like visual. And then here, like, he kills the guy with the gun, Evan, by just throwing the hatchet, and it's like a bird's eye shot looking down at him, and then the camera just follows him bird's eye view until we get to like where they are in the forest, and like it turns out that he hit Evan in the head, like the back of the head with the hatchet. So he's just dead, and that was basically off camera, which was it was a fun reveal though. It was a fun way to do it with the bird's eye shot, like just following him from the top. But then we stay in the bird's eye shot, and the killer just sort of walks over to like Troy, who's trying to crawl away at this point, begging for his life, and the killer just picks up a rock, walks over to him. It's very methodical. You feel the pacing, and then you expect it to cut away, and instead he just drops the rock onto his head, and his head shatters like a watermelon. It's so satisfying. It's so good. Like, I'm not saying it's as good as your Deadly Friend, like basketball head scene, and definitely not a Scanners level scene, but as far as modern head explosions go, this one's, I can't think of a recent one that did it for me quite as much as this.
I mean, I think it's just so refreshing is that it just, like it looks real. Like, so many other movies, it would just be like a CGI rock with CGI blood, well, and it would just...
Yeah, because obviously, like even Deadly Blessing, which we're saying so good, like nothing about that looked real. It was clearly a very fake head blowing up. It's just really funny. But what I think what's good about this is that because it's this long bird's eye view shot looking down the entire scene, like from the second like he walks into frame and the guy's crawling away, he picks up the rock, and it's clearly the actor lying on the ground begging for his life. I don't know. Maybe if I watched it again and like went frame by frame or something, but I don't know when they transitioned in the shot because it looked like one continuous shot. But clearly at some point they did some trickery here. Maybe like the bit where his head was technically shot separately, and they sort of like used some digital trickery to put it into the scene or something. But it was really convincing in the scene, at least on the first watch, of like just it being the actor there in one shot, the hands come up with the rock and he just drops it onto his head and his head just goes pop. Like I like it looked great. I'm curious how they did it. Because we're in an era though with computers and stuff, I suspect it's like, well, they shot the scene but then like they shot the like part of it separate and then just kind of like merged it in with a computer later or whatever. But it was good though. I liked it.
Yeah, liked it.
Yeah, it was very good. So yeah, the main girl comes back with Cole, and they're like, hey, like our friend's dead. We have to go. Let's come now. And of course, they just find like the aftermath of like everyone being missing, and the killer comes up. He's going to throw his hatchet at her, but luckily Cole like spots him in the last second and tells it to move out the way. And they get away in the ATV. They go back to the ranger station. The killer slowly follows. By the time he gets there, it's nighttime again. Mm-hmm. And this is where we get kind of our big bit where the ranger recognizes who this is. He recognizes the medallion that the girlfriend's wearing and says, hey, where did you get that? That's important. And basically spells out for us, yeah, that medallion was what keeps him there. Like, by taking that, you've let him get back up. And the last time he get back up a decade ago, he killed like so many people.
I love the ranger implying that they have like a backstory. Like it makes it feel like, this isn't a like Friday the 13th riff. Like this is like, Friday the 13th part 6 or something. Like it's like, oh, like we're watching a sequel right now.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a Tommy Doyle almost. Like Tommy Doyle became like the park ranger at Crystal Lake, and he's like there to keep tabs on things.
Yeah, because he mentioned something like, do you remember me? Like I put you in the ground like 10 years ago, or like something like that. That's like, oh, I like that. Yeah, there's this. Again, it's done well where, they're just giving you enough snippets to be like, oh, okay, that's cool. Versus like, he doesn't just stop and give this like info dump that feels like out of nowhere.
Yeah, he shoots him a couple of times, of course, and he's like, hey, that won't kill him. That'll just slow him down for a bit. We have to like take him back to like that same spot and bury him and all the rest of it.
And I like the tension between like like even when, Johnny's down and, he's not really dead, but I love that, the ranger just constantly has his gun pointed at him, and there's this tension, when they're trying to figure out what to do, and they're like, all right, we gotta like chain him up, and the guy's like, I'm not doing that, and he's like, all right, I'll do it, but like you have to hold the gun, and that and something's gonna mess up as soon as that gun goes to his hands.
Oh yeah, and the shot when this is all playing out, it stays on the body of Johnny, so that when they walk forwards, we're just seeing like their knees down, so we just hear them talking above the shot. And we just see like the gun tip or the barrel of the gun coming down into frame and their feet, and it's like, okay, you could have swapped. You could have went further back again to swap the gun. It's the one mistake the ranger makes is that he agrees to swap the gun over, and he'll be the one that ties him up with the chains when they're standing right next to him. Because as soon as he goes to switch the gun over to him, the hand comes up and grabs it, and that's it. And like the two of them like get away, and they've heard enough to kind of like have a play. Because this is one of the things I love about it, is that we stay with the killer, obviously dealing with the ranger and killing him, but when we sort of like catch back up again with the other characters, we get this indication that in the time they've been off screen, they've had the typical like third act horror movie conversation where they've come up with a plan to try and deal with the killer, but it happened, we didn't have to hear it, and that's beautiful because it's like one of the more tedious things you get in these movies. So having them just already acting out their plan, it's simple enough that you understand what they're doing. We get it. We don't have to think about it. I love that. The ranger though, like the killer, Johnny, he like I think he like basically just like severs the top of his spine and paralyzes him, because he's just sort of, he's still alive. You can see his eyes moving and stuff, but he then just he doesn't drag him immediately. He goes over to this like sort of like tool shed or whatever it is, and we just hear the roar of a mower, and I'm like, wait, is he going for a chainsaw? What's he going for? And he comes back, hooks in like a chain to this guy, like, around this guy's neck, drags him into the woodshed, and then we see, I don't even think I've seen this device before, but it's like a machine for chopping wood, but not a wood chipper. It's like a guillotine blade that comes down and chops like logs of wood in the same way that you'd axe a wood. Axe a wood, you know what I mean?
It reminds me of like those, I mean, I feel like mostly only see it in cartoons, but like those kind of like buzz saws where, you know, it's like on the, I guess like a conveyor belt. Usually I have like someone tied up to him, so it's kind of like that, but like at an angle, and the saw comes down instead of the log going to it. It's
clearly just for like chopping wood quicker, right? But it's got this big loud. Honestly, Tim, this was so loud compared to the rest of the movie. I had to turn down my movie for a couple of minutes because it was so goddamn loud. And the killer, like, you know, it plays out very slowly, but he puts like the guy's hand onto the thing. Although he gives him a demonstration first. I guess he's just checking if it's working, but he puts a log on first and like chops the log. He's like, okay, we've established what this thing does now. Let's put the hand on, and of course chops this guy's hand off. And again, kind of the charm of this, much like the Rock Death, is that this all plays out in like one long shot where it feels like they're sort of doing some trick, because you see him blinking. So when he puts the guy's like sort of head on it, so it's his neck that's on the path of the blade, it's kind of like, oh, and then it all just plays out and the head comes off. It's like, oh, how did it... Obviously there's some sort of transition trick they're pulling here to go from when it was clearly an actor in some form in the scene to whatever their dummy or whatever that they're replacing it with. I will say though, this could have been a little better for me. I think it would have felt almost a little redundant that he was even bothered to chop his head off. And I feel like what would have sold it for me is if we just either he could still scream, so he was still scared of it happening, or at the very least we got a close-up of his face to see that he was terrified of this happening. Like maybe we see his like eyes watering and he's like really terrified. I think that would have sold this death a bit more for me. I think as it is, it just kind of felt like he's just mutilating a corpse now. I don't know if there's really much that I'm getting out of this compared to like, because some of the deaths we've had so far have been so fun that this one just kind of felt like, okay, I get the intimidation of the machine and it doing this thing, but he's already so dead pretty much by the time he goes on it that I don't know, it didn't feel as important at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I still liked it just for like the cruelty to it, and I guess part of it is like,
I can respect that.
Like if this was someone that was like, you know, his big adversary and, you know, his last showdown, like maybe he wants to be a bit more, you know, like, oh, I really want to make you feel it, you know, versus like, yeah, I could just snap your head real quick and be done, but. Maybe there's like a level of, all right, like I'm really gonna make you like be afraid and anxious while I do this or something.
I think just having him like scream or yell right before the blade comes to hit him, just to show that he's like,
that's fair, yeah,
you know, like terrified, would have just done a lot for me in that moment. But I mean, it was still fun. Like it was not, and we should mention as well that the ranger says that his dad was the only survivor. Like his dad was a ranger when the first thing happened.
Right.
So yeah, ties it in.
I think, and he gives like a time to it. It's not like, I want to say he says it was like 70 years ago or something. I thought he said it was like, I thought he said Johnny got back up and killed a bunch of people 10 years ago, but that was 10 years after the initial thing that happened to him. So I thought it was only 20, but maybe I'm wrong. Well, what it sounded like to me was that like 10 years ago was the most recent thing, but then like his first initial, like the thing that happened like in his backstory was like 70 years ago. That's what I thought. I mean, I could easily have misheard.
I could have misheard it as well. Either one. I mean, I think it is not actually that important because it doesn't really affect anything. At all, yeah. But either way, like he's connected. His dad was involved, and like he's kind of like a legacy, like nemesis, I guess, if you will.
And again, it's just doing that interesting thing where it's like letting us know, oh yeah, there's backstory, there's lore here, but because of the way the movie is being presented, like you're not gonna get all of it, but it's cool. And
you just sort of you get to experience the satisfaction of killing them with the killer, because that's who we're following by and large. That's about to change in a minute, but that's what the movie's been for the majority of it. Because the killer then goes looking for the last two that have went into the woods, which is Chris and her not boyfriend Colt.
And his death is pretty funny.
His death is really funny actually, because basically he goes into the woods and we hear them whispering, "Oh, he saw us," and the killer turns around and kind of faces the camera. And like he's basically letting them be behind him, just talking, and we hear them say, "Oh, I've got a plan." And like Colt's like, "I'll distract, I'll get his attention, and I'll lead him to the fire like house or the fire cabin, and you like you'll prepare it with the gasoline," because we see that they've got like a kind of gasoline. And it's like, okay, right, I get it. They know that this medallion's what he wants. They're going to lure him with that. They're going to bury him, burn him. They're going to put him in the ground and put the medallion back and hope that fixes it, right? Easy to understand. I think this is a movie, if you've seen half a dozen horror movies before, you'll get it. It doesn't matter. Sure. You'll just understand it. So our man Cole walks out behind the killer and says something to get his attention. And before he even finishes his sentence, the killer just turns around and axes him in the face, like just straight into the face, up against a tree. He just dead. And then for good measure, he just starts axing the face over, like he's pissed. He's in a bad mood, and he starts just hacking away his face, and his face just becomes a bloody mush. It's like a pool of sausage and blood by the time he's done with it.
Yeah, I think they even say something before, like when they're whispering to each other, he says like, "I'll jump out and distract him, and then you run away." And then it's so funny that like his distraction lasts like half a second. He's just immediately. Yeah,
not only that, she is such in shock at what's happening to him that she stands there watching for like 2 minutes. Luckily, he's so distracted killing this guy and mutilating his head that she still manages to sort of get a head start and run away. But she just like she runs away so far, and she just like puts the gas canister down and puts the medallion on it as a peace offering, and hoping that he'll just take that and be happy. But then she just keeps running, and this is when the movie transitions to following her. And I was genuinely wondering this for like most of the movie. I was like, does this change at the end? Because how do you do the ending? You know, if we're going to have a final girl, do you switch perspectives just for that? Because like that's how you make it work, or that's how you shake things up at the end. So, you know, and I think it does like, I don't know if I like every choice it makes here in the last like 15 minutes, but it definitely makes some choices. It doesn't like just do the obvious thing, and I think that's interesting at the very least.
I will say that I really wasn't feeling it until like the very, very end, when I kind of realized like what they were doing, and then I actually kind of loved it. I was like, okay, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, so she basically keeps running through the woods to the point where it gets light, right? So she's been running all night, and it does like a harsh cut to her like being on the ground and in pain, and it turns out she's like ran into like a branch just stabbed her in the leg, right? So she's injured, she's hobbling out, and she gets out onto the road, and we get a classic like slasher movie like shot. It's very much the end of Texas Chainsaw when she's on the road, where you just have this shot of her on this long country road surrounded by forest on either side. And it's just this beautiful, like, I cannot emphasize how beautiful, like, 80% of this movie is. Like, it's just constantly just gives you nice looking shots. But a car's coming down the road, and she starts to wave at it and begging for help. Again, very Texas Chainsaw or whatever. And she gets in this car with this older woman, not super ancient, but like, you know, older, right? She's probably about 60 or something like that. And she's like, "Oh, I'll take you to the hospital. What happened? And she sits, like the main character, Chris, again, main character, quote unquote, she sits there like a zombie, just kind of listening, and this woman like starts talking, and she gets into a whole story about how her was it her uncle survived like a bear attack in the woods, and talks about how he made it out okay, and she goes on for a while about it, and we'll talk about that. But it was during this conversation where I'm like, I feel like, is this Johnny's mum? Is this like Mrs. Voorhees style thing where she's going to like turn on her and like be a villain? And it never did it. But part of me thinks the makers of this movie, we never even talked about the director. It's a writer-director, Chris Nash, who has done some short movies. He worked on some effects in other movies, including The Void, I think. So this is kind of an interesting,
cool.
this is him like sort of like leveling up to like directing his own movie. And he's getting a sequel out of it, so clearly some success. But he, I genuinely think that he was aware that some people in the audience might think this. That this might... Because even the car she's driving feels very similar to the car that Mrs. Voorhees has in Friday. Not even just at the end of that movie, remember, but even at the start, when we don't see who it is, but like Annie gets picked up in the car. Yeah. And like realizes she's in danger. Is a very kind of similar vehicle, which is just to say like a 4x4 kind of Jeep style thing. But it, like, I don't know, I was getting this vibe, and then obviously when she eventually like notices that Chrissy's leg's bleeding a lot, she pulls over, and she's been driving for like 5 minutes at this point because she's been telling this long ass story. But she gets out and she's like, I need to stop the bleeding. I need to like tie like a belt around your leg. And Chris gets so scared because, hey, we're still next to the forest. He could be out there. He could be right there waiting in the forest and come out at us. And I thought, we're going to get like a big final kill before it cuts to black, and like, he's going to have like succeeded or whatever. But then as she's watching intently, and she's agreed to let her like tie up her leg, she's just watching like with the eagle eyes at the forest, just being like terrified. And in the end of the movies, it just cuts to that gas canister in the forest, but the medallion's not there anymore. And it just like, ends on that. It's like, hey, maybe she did like do the right thing, and he's been satiated, and he's not following anymore. It's also, I mean, it's a lot because the ending's a little Texas Chainsaw. The old woman in the car made me think of Friday the 13th, and then this final moment of where is he is a little Halloween, because that's kind of how Halloween ends, with all the shots of the various places in the houses that he's been, and be like, where's Michael Myers now? So there's kind of like a lot of things in this ending to me.
Yeah, I like the swing it takes. Because as I was watching it, like it felt like it was going on for so long. Like that car ride really does feel like it's taking forever, and
it does, yeah.
And I was kind of just wondering, like what is the point of this? It's funny. I didn't get the same feeling as like, oh, like is she gonna be the mom or some other like killer or something?
Well,
but that's an interesting.
To be fair, you were of the opinion that the initial story happened 70 years ago, which would have made it impossible. I thought it was 20 years ago, so I thought she was just the right age.
That would make sense, yeah. But I kind of like this take, which to me, it's almost more terrifying because, once they stop and she gets out of the car and then, she's pleading with her to come back in. It seems like the easy thing to do would be like, all right, let's have like one more scare, and then he pops out and like puts an axe in the back of her head or something. But instead, I like the kind of quiet ending where, in a way, it's more terrifying because you just see the way she's like looking out into the woods. It's like, oh, she's probably never gonna be. Oh yeah, like feel safe again.
She's traumatized for the rest of her life. She's never going to live this down. Yeah,
and like that's more terrifying. Like. Not being able to see him, but constantly looking and wondering if he's there.
It's impressive because I was expecting him to pop out, and I was kind of anticipating it even and looking forward to it and saying, yeah, give me one more kill. But I kind of appreciate the balls in making the decision to not do it, because it is a bit more interesting and different. And I appreciate the swing it takes in doing that. To talk about the actual car ride, though, because we should mention I actually have my other one complaint really about this movie. Actually, is there's something weird about the image quality in this car ride. Like, see, once they're in the car, and it basically just cuts between two shots of them, like one of her sitting there like a zombie, the other one looking over at the old lady as she's talking. Is that it was doing something weird with, like, it felt like the focus on their faces was like going in and out of focus, like just like constantly. And not in a way that felt like an intentional effect. Like, maybe this was like something that there was maybe an attempt to do something stylish, but it just kind of fell flat because it felt like a fault rather than like a artistic choice. I don't know if it's because maybe they were doing some kind of like trickery, like some sort of green screen style thing for like the outside. Maybe if they weren't actually driving, they were doing like just like a backdrop with projected or green screen.
Yeah.
I don't know what the phrase is for it. I'm blanking. But anyway, the point being is I thought maybe like their attempts to try and like make it look more real and less obvious that the background's different is to have this weird focus thing happening where it's kind of making everything feel a little bit off at times. But it was kind of distracting me a little bit where it felt kind of weird. Part of me wonders if it's just like a side effect of something of how they shot this scene. Because it is obviously a super low budget movie, right? Obviously it would be, but it's not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but it was distracting me a little bit in the scene. I don't know if you noticed anything.
No, I didn't notice it, but I mean, at this point, I was very tired. It wasn't that late, but I was just very tired after having a very long weekend and being very sick. So I was just more focused on trying to stay awake.
Yes, just for everyone, he got sick again. This is not like we're recording again after he's just been sick. Multiple recordings. Tim's been sick like every other week for the past like 3 months. It feels like.
yeah, it happens. But hey, I still show up because what can I say? I love our fans.
It's not what he said before this. He was saying some pretty mean things.
Well, there's that one that knows I don't like him, but
yeah.
You know who you are.
Yes. Anyway, the conversation, and I say conversation, the monologue that the lady has, because like Chris is barely saying anything. She's just sitting there almost catatonic. And she basically tells a story about how, oh, you'll be fine. I've seen worse than you. And she's like, what do you mean worse than me? And that's why I thought it was going down a rabbit hole of her eventually getting to, oh, my son killed a bunch of people and stuff. Yeah. Instead, she tells a story about her uncle who was a ranger or whatever, who ended up looking for a bear. He was told to keep tracking it, and then the bear snuck up behind him and bit into the back of his head, and somehow he survived. He was clinically dead for a minute, but the bear just left him in the water, didn't really care, just moved on. And that's eventually when Chris finally says something, she kind of says, why did the bear leave him? Surely if the bear was killing people, it was for food or something, or for defense or whatever, blah blah. And she basically theorizes, or something that her uncle would theorize, is that basically some animals in the world, especially things like coyotes and stuff like that, and maybe this bear, I can't remember what she called it, was like hen craziness or something like that, or hen house effect or something, or hen house fever. But basically this idea where the animal just kind of becomes it stops having different modes and just thinks they're in the situation constantly where they're surrounded by their prey and they just have to keep killing, right? Even if there's no reason for them to keep killing. And they just kind of effectively go crazy. And it kind of feels like, oh, this might apply to Johnny. Like Johnny's just this wounded animal who's just going to kill anyone around him if they're in his territory kind of thing. But yeah. And then of course that's when she finally notices the bleeding leg and stops the car. But it was interesting because it was like, okay, where's this going? I was on the edge of my seat, like, where is this going? And especially this is the first time where we don't know where the killer is. The whole That's movie, true, yeah. We've been following him. So it made that moment when they stop the car and the doors open and Chris is looking into the forest, terrified that he's going to pop out. It was actually really effective because for the first time in the whole film, we don't know if he's actually there. Because the entire time we have known where he is. That's been the gimmick. That's true. Oh, yeah. So in that sense, it's very effective, suddenly not knowing where he is, which is why I think it works that it shifts away from his kind of viewpoint in the last chunk, because all of a sudden not knowing where he is super effective in a way that other movies, can be pretty effective, but will it ever be as effective as a movie where you've known the entire time and then suddenly don't? That's kind of, it's just an interesting experimental way of doing a slasher movie, and I'm kind of into the idea of them doing a sequel and just seeing what else they can do with it, play with it in different ways. I think the big thing that I would hope for in a sequel, which they may or may not do depending on budget, is I would kind of hope we get to some different locations. I want to follow them around a suburban area, or I mean, if not a city, but I would probably imagine a small town would be the more logical next step. But
And if it becomes like a wildly successful franchise, I mean, we can do all the staples. Like eventually we can get him in space and
yeah, maybe something like I don't know, like Johnny X, I guess.
It'd be interesting to see like a crossover movie, but like still just from his like, you know, point of view. So like we're getting these other things with like some guy that like we know nothing about.
Oh sure, yeah. Yeah, they could totally play with it in different ways. Like, I wonder if like they shake up the format a little bit and start it following the killer, but actually maybe do more of a two-hander where we sort of like switch over to, like maybe the final girl and actually follow her this time, which would feel very different.
Yeah.
Or maybe, I mean, do we even have Johnny back? Do we do another killer somewhere else so it's completely different? I don't know.
That's true. It's not called like Johnny, you know, the killer.
Yeah. That said, based on the teaser poster, I would say it's a 95% likelihood that it is Johnny again with his mask, and we're going to continue that legacy. I assume it is, but you never know. They could do something wildly different. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of potential of like, okay, what different types of deaths can we do in this style? What different types of settings can we play with? And as long as there's not a ton of copycats, like I could easily go another 2 or 3 of these and just, you know, different, as long as they keep being creative about how they like do things and do stuff in different areas. Like, what pisses Johnny off next time? I guess the only thing I would really ask for is that it can't just be that he's chasing his medallion again, I guess.
Yeah.
But will that really matter though if the location is different and the deaths are all fun? Probably not. But
that's
I'm just kind of spitballing what a sequel could be. But I guess I'll see you in 2026 for In a Violent Nature 2. Can't imagine it's going to be that long. I mean, it's let's say Avatar 5, you know. It's not going to be 7 years of production. But yeah, no, I really liked it. I mean, I'll sum up in a minute when we get to the ratings and stuff. But yeah, I had a really good time. It felt fresh. Obviously it's playing in a lot of slasher things that I really like as well, which does not hurt. And it was constantly just very pretty. Like, the cinematography just felt really nice. It was just, you know, so I guess I'll put Tim out his misery. He's probably sick of hearing me talk about it. So Tim, what was your scene of the movie? I ask, and it's probably going to be what I think it is, but maybe you'll win.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I hate just being a basic bitch, but yeah, I think I'd have to go with the yoga scene. It's actually quite a good number of you know, like fun deaths and stuff in the movie, but I mean that was just so over the top, and it had been hyped up for me, but yeah, I thought it lived up to it. It was pretty cool. Yeah,
I mean, I think if you come out with 4 or 5 good deaths, you're having a good slasher time. And I would say there's 4 or 5 good slasher deaths in this, and then plus a couple of stylish ones that are off camera. Because I would say yoga one's the most standout, of course, and yeah, it's probably my scene in the movie too, if I'm being honest. But I would also say that underneath that, you've got the rock death, you've got Colt's axe to the face, you've got the decapitation next to the tree through the mouth. I think all of those deaths are all, you know, top notch. And then maybe you like the logger wood cutting.
I mean, in general, I liked the whole, like, not even so much like a death scene, but I liked the whole like confrontation at the sheriff's station. Sure, I thought that scene was just really tense and a lot of fun. Yeah, like if I was gonna go with a scene that wasn't, you know, like a gory kill scene, it'd probably be that.
I will give it a shout out as well. I'm picking the good death scene, but I'll give a shout out to the moment where it transitions to Chris, because I like that we're watching like Johnny hack this guy's head to just like, you know, a pool of blood, right? It's just soup at this point. And we basically just see her out of focus between his legs because of the shot, right? You can see her in the background. And I like that because she kind of enters that shot like she's the killer in a slasher movie. She feels like the one who is off in the distance, kind of like watching, and then the camera cuts over to her, and that's the transition. Like, she enters like she's the killer in the scene, and then we follow her from that point on. I thought that was a really little stylistic way of changing that. This is definitely a movie where the style is the substance. Like, the style is 100% the substance of this. But no, loved it. All right, MVP of the movie. This is an interesting one. You picked that, actually. Go on.
I mean, I think I obviously have to give it to Johnny. I mean,
Not
again,
Troy, you don't like the dickhead boyfriend, who was really upset that his girlfriend made a small penis joke about him in the campfire scene.
oh yeah, I forgot about that. No, I mean, yeah, like obviously we're spending so much time with him, but you know, the apologies, I don't know the name of the actor that portrayed him, but
It's Rye Barrett.
yeah, but he did a good job of, you know, being that kind of like prototypical silent, you know, deadly, slow walking slasher villain. Like, you know, it does exactly what you need it to do, and you know, for someone that's like, you know, such a focus of the movie, I thought it was really good.
And he's a top billed on IMDb, which I mean,
Nice.
I mean, Robert Englund might have got that for Freddy later on, but he definitely
Yeah.
didn't for the first one. So
Sure,
it's kind of interesting to see a new slasher franchise where the killer gets top billing immediately. Interesting. All right. Oh, well, I'm picking. I was about to ask you the rating, but I've not picked a. I mean, what do I argue for other than Johnny? Really, I mean, I guess. I mean, I love the cinematography. It was like a big part of why the movie works for me. So I could be a bit of a douche and say the cinematographer, but I mean, I'll say it's Johnny's movie, you know. Yeah. I can't wait until we watch the second one and some character like knows about him and goes, "Here's Johnny," you know, that little Shining reference.
Sure.
Anyway, all right, Tim, what are you rating in a Violent Nature?
So like I said, I like the movie. I don't think I quite loved it. You know, I've said this before, but again, I'm just not like, I like slashers, but they're not like my main bag. Like I'm sure if there was someone that had a really interesting, unique take and was doing like a big love letter to, you know, the Nightmare on Elm Street series, or which I guess is
as technically a slash. I mean, it's different from the other ones because of the dream stuff, but it's.
Yeah, I get that's a slash, but it's, you know, kind of its own in its own vein. And then, or like something like, you know, that was like that for Evil Dead or whatever. I'd probably be gushing about it too. But I think, you know, it's an interesting experiment. You know, I do agree that, you know, it looked quite pretty. The kills are very standout. You'll probably disagree with me quite a bit. It's not a super long movie, but I did think it could be tightened up a little bit. But I mean, again, maybe if I'm being a little picky, maybe if I watch it when I'm not like super sick and tired, maybe I won't be as, you know, eager to get through it. Not that I wasn't enjoying it, but yeah, again, that was kind of my mood. So I'm still gonna give it a pretty decent score. I think it's interesting. I think they do pull off a lot of cool stuff, and it's worth checking out. But I think for me, I'm gonna go, which I'm assuming is probably gonna be lower than you, but I think I'm gonna do a 7.5. I think it's good. You know, it just didn't quite get above that for me, and maybe I'll watch it again at some point, and maybe it'll raise a bit.
Okay. I was trying to think there. I could have sworn there was something recently that you were a grump about that I liked, but I'm looking at our ratings for everything in the last couple of months and I can't see anything. It must be a phantom. I can't see it. Usually, if there's a difference, it's usually you that's rated higher than me because, well, as you said, you're a basic bitch, and I'm a man of culture, man of fine art.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was like this got me like engaged with its storytelling immediately. Like it was just so fresh and unique. As soon as it started, I was into it. I was on board for its ride. There was a sort of moment where I was like, well, you know, I like the idea of this and it's great for this first 5-10 minutes, but is this going to like work for a whole movie? Can they sustain this? And I think for the most part, it did work for me. Maybe you could tighten up the pacing a little bit once you really get into like what the movie is, but by and large, I was super into it. I think the ending's not what I expected, but I also kind of appreciate the swings that it took. There is good 4 or 5 pretty good, one really standout death, which is what you want from a slasher. I think this is like the perfect counterpart to Terrifier in so many ways for me, because Terrifier is this character who's so into what he's doing in a gleeful way that there's so much like sort of such a fun comedy aspect to Terrifier, whereas this is like lacking that. Like, I mean, we said that one thing was funny earlier on, but this is so cold and like distant and feels like weird because we're following the killer. So I love that tonally it feels such a million miles away, but I love that both of them exist. But I'm not going to go absurdly high either. I'm going to give it an 8.5, which is to say that I think it's great, and I'd be fascinated to see if the sequel either feels like a diminished return, or it feels like they nail it, like Terrifier did, where Terrifier 2 just like, oh no, now it's like reached the zenith of what it can be. It just kind of depends, like what have they got cooking for it. And I won't even be that disappointed if the second one ends up just being like kind of good but not as good, so it's like a 6 or something like that. I'll still be quite happy with that probably, because hey, it's still a fun bunch of kills. But you know, who can say what will come? But I'm going 8.5 for this one. I was super into this like all the way through pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, the sequel is really interesting because it's like, well, you know, this is doing something very new and unique. So is the sequel just going to be more of that? And, you know, even if it's good, it's like, all right, just more of the same. Or, you know, do you have an angle or an idea that will make it also seem like really fresh again? And it's always a hard thing to do with these type of things. It's like, all right, well, you know, you really impressed us, but, you know, how are you going to top that? And, you know, it's not bad to do something that's just kind of on the same level, but, you know.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be mad. It obviously won't be that inspiring to just do the same thing more or less, but with, you know, new kills and maybe a new location. But like, I would probably be in for a few of those anyway, and just be fine with that. But obviously, I think if they want to like make it feel fresh again, I think they do something, maybe not right away from the start different, but do something that's a bit more of a pivot, right? Where maybe like Chris is still around and we follow her for a bit in some way, or maybe we follow, maybe we have like an actual Tommy Doyle or Tommy Jarvis, Tommy Doyle's Halloween, Tommy Jarvis style character, and we make it a twofer where we're also following someone who's hunting the killer or something.
Oh yeah,
right. In the same kind of way where it's like a lot of like him like on his own, like stalking through the woods, and like I don't know, maybe you could do something with that, or pull a Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance with the first half Johnny's perspective, and then it switches to like the, you know, the like the hero's perspective for the second half. Maybe even set through at the same time, kind of thing, where you go back to the start of the timeline and follow it from the other perspective. I don't know, like these are all like this may not be anything related to what they actually have in their heads for the second one. I'm just pondering ideas for how you shake it up and do something that feels true to what this one was, but do something new again. But even if they don't, I think I can still have a fun time with just like some more of this. But you know, I think if there's copycats, the copycats will probably feel kind of shit, because it takes a lot of talent to actually do what this movie did and have it feel as good as it did.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could easily see someone much less talented like trying something like this and just having it be a total bore or just not working.
Yeah, I am liking though that we're getting a bit of a slasher renaissance between this and Terrifier, because like for 10, 15 years it felt like they were just gone, and I was getting the same shitty ghost story over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, when I say like, I'm not like the biggest slasher fan, like I still do appreciate them, and yeah, it sucks when they're just not there. Like you never want just like, you know, it to be dominated by one thing. Like I in general, I like supernatural stuff, but I agree the stuff we'd been getting for the last I don't know how many years has just been so awful and repetitive that I'm just ready to be done with it. You
know what, I said before we started spoilers, I thought this was going to be a short episode because there wasn't that much plot, and we're hitting an hour 45 somehow. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah,
passion. I had too much passion for it. That's what the problem is.
Well, hopefully eventually we'll get to a short episode and get to bed at a decent hour.
I thought you were going to say hopefully eventually we'll end this episode as if we're not like wrapping up now.
Too, yeah. I'm not going to lie, I have to pee, so we can wrap up.
We can take a break once if you need to piss, Tim. That's an option you have. You can say, hey, can we have a timeout?
You'd love that, wouldn't you? Just knowing I'm there pissing. You freak.
What is this coming from? What's happening? All right. That's pretty much the show. That is our thoughts on In a Violent Nature. I think it's one of the standouts of the year. That's an Exuma, and also I Saw the TV Glow, but I Saw the TV Glow I don't think I'm going to count as horror when we get to our top 10, but I think this and Exuma are the two that are really sticking out to me so far. And then some good stuff. As much as I made fun of it earlier for a mistake it made, I did enjoy I Saw TV. I really liked that. Late Night with the Devil, I still enjoyed that. Immaculate was still pretty good, and had its own thing. So I think there's reasons to be enthusiastic.
We've been doing some, I guess now we're kind of reaching the point where we're catching up on some of the bigger stuff, but I feel like we've had some good watches lately.
Yeah, I will tell you, everyone, there was a couple of movies that I had planned for October, assuming they'd be, rentable, and they technically are rentable, but they're rentable at $20 still. So there's a few things that I thought would be in October that are going to slip to November or January, not December, of course, because December's Christmas time, but
holy time.
Yes. Yes, all the holes that someone can make with a knife in someone's body. But yeah, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV is the main way that you can support this show and all the shows we do at Mail Fuzz Movies. So that's this podcast, but also the sci-fi podcast, The Atomic Sim Experiment, and the Collector's Cut, which is the show where we do franchises and like thrillers and action movies and things like that, or dance movies, as we did earlier this year as a season. But you can support all that and help keep it all coming. I wouldn't be able to do all this as often as I do all these shows if it wasn't for the support. Every month you get a bonus exclusive episode of Screams After Midnight. When everyone else gets a week off from the show, you get an episode of us doing something silly, normally from the 80s, not always, but often is. And you get that every month. During October you get more than that. We've got 3 in the tank for this month, for this October, so hopefully that sounds like a fun time. I can tell you by now the first one would have been The Kindred, and there's another couple coming later in the month. So look forward to that. But there's also even more stream segments, which is once or twice a month thing where we'll do like a top 5, or we'll have a discussion about something, but it won't be a review. It'll be something different from the regular show, but still horror movie related, of course. Plus there's bonuses for the other shows and whatever. And if you don't like Patreon for some reason, you can also do YouTube membership and get most of the content that way as well. I will say as well, if you're signing up for Patreon, if you're using the Apple iOS app, don't use that to sign up, because they've started like taxing an extra 30% in all the prices, which does not go to us, does not go to Patreon even, it just goes to Apple. You can still use the Apple app to access your Patreon account and access all the content. Just use a web browser or something on a different device or whatever to actually set up the payment, and you're good. I'll mention that occasionally just to remind everyone, because it's just like an extra 30% that just makes everything more expensive for basically no reason. Jesus. Yeah, just Apple being dicks. So worth mentioning. Mm-hmm. All right, Tim, we're done now. You'll be happy to know. I plugged the things. We're good. I genuinely don't know what will be next episode now anyway, even though I've not been telling you for October, because I've made an executive decision whilst talking about the movie to move it up in the schedule. So okay, well, we can let Tim go and enjoy his piss. This has been Screams After Midnight. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Keep watching scary movies. Happy October-thon.